Happy Sunday. Welcome to Let's Talk About You. I am your host, Camilla Francis, and it's always an honor and a privilege to be here with you. We have been having magnificent guests after magnificent guests after magnificent guests, and I am extra excited about our guest today. Carrie Williams, a licensed clinical therapist. I'm just going to call her Dr. Carrie Williams. I'm just going to call it into existence. She works here locally in the Virgin Islands, and she just has so much to offer. We talk about so many things in our lives and what we go through and what we don't go through, and we don't always get to the root of things. So today, let's talk trauma. We're going to talk about the ins and outs and have a real in-depth conversation about the root of why we act the way that we do, or why we do the things that we need to do, and how can we do things differently and better and heal and move forward and move on to our next and be the great individuals we were designed and ordained to be. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I am calling her Dr. Carrie Williams.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Welcome into the room. Welcome into the room.
I'm excited to be here to talk about trauma.
Yes. So tell our listening audience more about who Carrie Williams is before we get into the meat of stuff.
Okay, well, to let everyone know, I'm a transplant from the great state of Kentucky, so you may hear a Southern accent. I apologize; it's just where I was raised. I've moved to St. Thomas 2.5 years ago, and just say this is my second home. And I appreciate the people of St. Thomas welcoming St. Thomas, St. John, other Virgin Islands welcoming me as was my home. As this is my home. This is my second career. I used to be in sales, which is traumatic in itself. So after I turned a certain age, I said I want to do something for people. Always say, what can we do? What can we do? And I turned the question inward and said, what can I do? And I decided to become a mental health therapist just to help out our community, our culture, heck, everyone, because we all have issues. It's how we deal with issues. And my job is trying to normalize what is going on in your life, because we don't share our traumas. We only share our successes. We don't share our sadness. And it's okay because we're human. And so I love what I do. As you can see, I'm excited. I wouldn't trade this for anything in the world. And it sounds weird when someone says, I really love trauma, because I'm here to normalize it, because we
Yeah,
all have trauma in our lives. So
you're
that's who
right.
I am.
I'm welcome to the Virgin Islands. I'm glad that you're here. You're indoctrinated as an island girl.
I love it. I love it. I
Yeah,
love it.
yeah. So we don't mind the Southern accent because we have an accent as well. So it makes us beautiful, multicultural, and just added part to the callaloo of who we are as Virgin Islanders.
That's
So
right.
let's
That's
get
right.
into the topic of understanding trauma. Because it's so complex, and you said we all have problems, we all have trauma, but sometimes I don't know if we understand what trauma is, or that we even suffer from trauma. So
Well,
tell us about the trauma, the different types, the acute, the chronic, the complex. Can you break some of that down for us so we can understand what trauma is?
and I love this question, because as a therapist, I'm a teaching therapist, because I don't want anything to be a secret. And so there's really three types of trauma there. And it has come to fruition, like the three types, pretty much in the last decade. So you've heard the term PTSD, and people are like, what is that? Well, that's a certain type of trauma. You have acute trauma. And acute trauma is the trauma that happens after one single short lived incident. It could be a car accident, it could be assault. And people don't think about this, and I think about this. It could be after witnessing a death of someone that you love.
Mhm.
And that means even if you're watching, you are there when your parents pass away. That's traumatic, and that would be considered acute trauma. There's chronic trauma, and chronic trauma is a prolonged exposure to distressing events. I mean, unlike acute, this is more than one incident, and so this is domestic violence, abuse, exposure to war. That's chronic trauma. Complex trauma, it's like tears. It's acute, which is small. It's one incident. Chronic trauma is several incidences. Complex trauma is chronic trauma on steroids. So you have seen, you are in a domestic violence situation. You are in a war. So those are two traumas that are happening simultaneously at the same time. And so that creates a complex trauma. It's not just one trauma, it's several traumas. So those are basically the definitions of trauma. And we're going to talk more in depth about that when we talk about therapy techniques when we get further into the conversation. But so what would be considered PTSD is complex trauma.
Okay.
That would PTSD. And so that kind of is the guideline of how trauma is and how trauma works. If that's how you want to look at it. And trauma can impact us in several ways. And it could be in the brain, the body, or the nervous system.
Well, tell us about that because, you know, when we think about trauma, we sometimes think because of the PTSD, it's a psychiatric thing. It's in the brain. So,
Mhm.
but we don't always think about trauma in the body, the nervous system. So, can we talk about that?
Well, when trauma can affect the brain in several ways, it can make depression, anxiety, emotional dysregulation. I always have an issue with this question. It makes with this word emotional dysregulation. It makes our emotions everywhere. That's basically what I'm saying. It causes us to have guilt. It causes us to blame ourselves for the trauma. And it also can increase substance use abuse. So, trauma on the body, it's increased blood pressure, it's headaches, it's stomach problems because our brain and our gut are connected. And it also can increase chronic diseases. There's certain cancers that occur when there's trauma stored in our body. It can cause heart disease, and it also can increase diabetes, among other chronic diseases that we're now finding are linked to trauma. Also, when a child, because we're going to talk about children have trauma
Yeah.
too. When a
Mhm.
child suffers trauma, people are like, oh my gosh, they have ADHD. Oh my gosh, they have ADHD. They can't concentrate. They can't do that. Well, they're figuring out that trauma and ADHD have the same symptoms. If you are in a traumatic event or a traumatic household, you can't relax. Well, if you have ADHD, you can't relax either. So we're finding the linkage like what may be ADHD is trauma, and we need to treat the children not for hyperactivity, but for trauma.
See, I'm
So we're
glad that you
finding,
said that. I don't mean to interject there, but
no, go
I'm
ahead.
one of those people that feel that ADHD, there's something else. I'm glad that you mentioned that it may be trauma because I'm still not sold on ADHD. I'm sold on, yes, the trauma issue and something else. So I just wanted to point that part, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, no, and there's a certain study, I cannot think of her name, it's called ACEs, and it's called Adverse Childhood Experiences Syndrome. And so now we're figuring out that if a child has a high ACE score, it's not ADHD, it's trauma. And that is coming from a neighborhood that has gang violence. That's coming from, in the Virgin Islands, there's hurricanes. And a lot of people don't realize weather related trauma is real, and so there are things that affect children that they can't express, so it comes out in their behavior. And so again, how I look at trauma in the body is, I use an example in therapy. It's called a frayed wire. And you know what that is like when you're plugging in your iPhone and then it starts getting frayed at that one part that plugs in. And if you were to take it out and touch it, it could shock you.
Shock you,
Well,
yes.
yeah, that's how someone who with trauma, they are afraid wire, and whatever triggers that they see, it shocks them. And so, my job as a therapist, and as someone, and then your job as someone who is putting the spotlight on trauma, is how do we get that duct tape around that frayed wire so it doesn't sting us anymore? And it comes with healing. It
Mhm.
comes with healing. Um, So that's why I talk about trauma because can be like, why do I always have a headache all the time? Why do I always have a headache all the time? Because you haven't processed the trauma and it's going to come out. Our body keeps score. We can put
Yeah.
it down, put it down, put it down, put it down, but it's eventually going to come out. And it may not be in the best ways. So that's why I like to normalize. Again, you see, I'm smiling and happy. We're talking about something that's deep, but let's normalize it because we are worth it. We're worth it.
And I'm glad that you said that about normalizing it, because that's what I was going to say. So, with all this that's going on, and it's the norm that we are always going to go through something is going to happen. That is normal. So, if something good is happening, that's normal. Something bad can happen, that's normal. Why can't the impacts be normal as well or normalize, such as trauma? So, thank you for saying let's normalize it. Yes.
Yeah, and I'm going to go into culture because we, as a culture, we better smile and get over it, and we can't. That's why we have intergenerational trauma, but that's a whole other podcast.
And I still want to talk about that because, the smile and get over it, the pray and get over it, don't tell anyone your business. That's trauma by itself.
Right, and then we're going to keep it as a secret, and we're all going through something. So then it makes us ashamed to talk about, my headache is caused because I was been in this domestic violence situation. I've taken all this medicine and I started going to therapy and my headache went away.
Yeah,
And so we just got to normalize that because trauma affects us in so many different ways.
it does. And it goes into like debunking some of the myths that we're told, like, as we said, time heals all wounds, or what you went through isn't that bad. I mean, I went through
Oh,
worse. I mean, help us with things like that, because mm, I can go down a whole rabbit hole.
well, it infuriates me because just because you went through something doesn't make my trauma any less. It's not like, oh, you can pray and yes, it's great to have that spiritual connection to God or whomever your higher power is. Yet we also have to do the work. Because if we're quoting Bible and doing that, faith without works is dead. And we can pray all day, but if we don't do the work to get to process the trauma, it's kind of not going to go anywhere.
True, and so many times we when we think about the spiritual impact, you know, because of what you said earlier and what I believe, because of the generational trauma, we don't want to talk about it, because if we're talking about it, we're giving the bad thing life, and that's not the Christian thing to do, or the spiritual thing to do, or whatever it is that you believe in. And it kind of tests your faith, type of thing, is what you're going
Well,
through.
yeah, but that's normal to question your faith when something traumatic happens. Because we always think if there's a God or whoever your higher power that you believe in exists, why are they doing it to me? And I found out the question is, why not me? We're all living this human experience. And like you said, we talk about when good things happen, but then when bad things happen, especially in our community, we're going to sweep it under the rug. But if you keep sweeping stuff under the rug, you're going to trip over it. It's going to get bigger and
Okay,
bigger.
that's
So now
good.
you have to process that, and we have to get that duct tape. You hear me talk about that frayed wire. We have to start healing ourselves. And then as adults, our children see that, oh my gosh, this is not a family secret, or this is nothing to be ashamed of. So that is breaking generational curses. They see that it's nothing like we all have, We all had that uncle or aunt who didn't do good things or may abuse people, but we uncle such and such, he just doesn't come to family reunions. Well, what about the child that he hurt or the adult that he hurt? That's trauma. We have to figure it out. We have to talk about it. Stop sweeping it under the rug. And again, I'm smiling because I'm so happy we're talking about it because it's nothing to be ashamed of. I've had trauma. You've probably had trauma. Your trauma, guess what? I'm not going to say, oh, Camilla, I've been through worse because that invalidates your trauma. I don't care if a dog bit you and you're traumatized of dogs. It's still your trauma. Dog can bite me and I love it all day. It
And
doesn't make
people
it
do
worse.
that way too much. We try to knock someone else's feelings down to make it seem not significant, or and they're less worthy of the compassion because it's not quote unquote that bad.
Right. But it's bad to me. It's bad to me. And my feelings are valid and my trauma is valid. My joy, you don't say, well, I had more joy than you. I had more happiness than you. And so we have to stop that as a society. And again, it's getting out there. And I like to say that I sound like I need to have my cane out. But the children under, and I can say it, under 30, they're doing a great job of doing it. They're doing
They
a great job.
are. They so are. This generation is like they're not doing that anymore. Or what I would say with our dialect, meaning that.
No, we're gonna get it.
They
And
are not doing that anymore. And but let's talk about one of the reasons why they're not doing it. I think, do you think it has to do with the triggers, what they are and how they show up, and
they,
because of those triggers.
well, and they're learning because again, I should have had my cane. It's this TikTok that they look at, and it normalizes because growing up, I'm a woman of a certain age. We didn't know what a trigger was. We didn't know what a trigger was. And now you hear, again, I hate to say that people under 30 going, that's triggering me. But triggering could be emotional, it could be physical, and it could be environmental. So again, I'm going to go back to kind of my teaching because I love to teach so
Please
people
do
know what.
teach us. We need this. And
Yeah,
listening audience, I need you to get your notepads and your notebooks because this is very important for you, the child in you, and your children, your grandchildren. We have to break these generational curses. So, listening audience, get your paper and your pads. What we're doing here today is important. Please
yeah.
proceed. Teach us.
A trigger is something that can reactivate that body stress response, and it's going to cause you to feel overwhelmed, anxious, or even fearful. And how a trigger works, going to get a little scientific because I love the brain. I love how it works. The brain can associate like stimuli with like sights, sounds, smells, or even certain emotions with a traumatic event. And when the stimuli is encountered after that traumatic event, the brain is like, oh my gosh, we're back into where this happened. Like if you're in a car and you hear a car screech and you've been in a car accident, you're like, I'm going to get hit again. And so then your body tenses up. That's a trigger. If you're in the island, again, I'm terrified of hurricanes. Well, I lived on an island where there was, tropical depressions and hurricanes. And if I hear that now, and I'm in Kentucky for right now, if I even hear a hurricane and I'm not in the island, it makes me nervous. It makes me want to start getting everything together. It's going to make me want to plug up all my electronics. It's going to make me want to store water, and I don't have to do that. That's a trigger. Um, it's just the same emotional and behavioral response as if the event just happened. If you hear a gunshot and you've been a victim of gun violence, you're going to start sweating. You're going to start feeling nervous. You're going to start feeling like I'm in that situation again. So a trigger is something that just it could be physical. It make your heart start racing. It can make you want to vomit. It can make you cause it will causes nausea. It makes your chest tight. And then when it's also emotional and it can fear, it can cause sadness, it can cause anger, and it can cause helplessness. And then there's situational triggers. And that is like the death of my mom, the death of my friend who was murdered. And so those dates, so there's three types of triggers. Again, it could be physical, emotional, and situational. I can see someone who's a victim of domestic violence or past domestic violence, see someone else be a victim. That's a situational trigger. So there's three types of triggers, and then there's also relationship triggers.
Tell us.
And that
Tell
is
us.
talking about uncle who's not at the family reunion because we know, but everybody else knows. But you want me to now come and sit because the reason why Uncle such and such is not there is because I told the family what happened and now everybody's conflicted with me. How dare you tell everybody what happened? So that can make you feel unsafe or betrayed by even your family or whoever you're in a relationship with. That's a trigger. That's a
Because
trigger.
you are
So
treated like the outcast because not everyone can accept the fact that you couldn't accept what happened to you, and rightfully so.
yeah, push it under the rug. We don't talk about that. You should have kept that a secret because now Uncle such and such can't come to the family reunion. So now you're the bad guy. So there's
Mm.
different kinds of triggers. And when we become aware of those triggers, we can actually start being aware and how do we process that. Another example of physical trigger is like pain. Pain. You know, you see something and now your heart, you got pain. You're like, now my body's all tense. Why is my neck hurt? Another one that is a smell. Say,
Mm.
unfortunately, you were victimized and there was, I don't know, coconut smell. Now, when you smell coconut, it's linked to your victimization. Um, like I said, sounds, gunshots, loud noises, that those are triggers. Also, if you see Uncle such and such out in the street, guess what? That's a trigger.
Or even if you hear a song that, during a traumatic time in your life, that too is a trigger.
It's a trigger. And so, again, just being aware of your triggers can also
Mhm.
help you begin to process your trauma. Um, it can just you want to actually see a therapist. I'm a therapist who sees a therapist. We got to normalize reaching out for help. And I think people think therapy is just like traditional sit and talk and we're just going to talk about like what my mom did to no, we're going to figure out your triggers and how you can cope with those. Um, and then
So,
there's grounding techniques. Okay, sorry.
when you mention going to therapy and working out how um to work out what it is that you're going through, is when you're thinking of a therapist, tell our listening audience the things that they should think of, not of when they need a certain therapist. Should they have a specialist like you specialize in trauma? Should we look for someone that specializes in a certain field, or a general therapist? How to decide what type of therapy someone may need?
Well, all therapists are trained in trauma.
Okay.
What makes me kind of different is I went and got additional certifications, but we're all trained into how to do trauma. Just trauma happens to be trauma and grief are my favorite things as I'm smiling. And you're like, what? But is the best thing about a therapist is the relationship. So if you go to therapy and it's one time and you don't feel a connection, you don't have to go back. Therapy is not about the therapist. It's not our feelings that matter, it's yours. So you have to build that relationship and that trust. And if you go in and your gut saying this is something also is going to help trust yourself when you have trauma. If you don't feel good in your gut, Listen to your gut. Don't go back. It sounds so nonchalant. We don't care if you come back. And I'm a therapist because it has to be a proper fit. We want to help people. And if it doesn't work, I say it all the time in session. If you choose to come back, let me know. If you don't choose to come back, I will help you find a therapist that fits your needs. Because
So
it's
that
not about you.
no.
Yeah, it's not about my healing. It's about your healing. And again, it's about that relationship and it's about realness. I know that just because I'm a therapist, I'm a human. You have some therapists who will judge you. No, no. We are here to support you and help you through your process of healing, whatever it may be. Whatever it may be. There's several different kinds of therapy. So, like if there's a child that has had trauma, you might want to see a therapist who's TFCBT certified, and that's trauma informed cognitive behavioral therapy for children between the ages of 3 and 18. And so, this is a specialized certification, and it may be hard to find because there's not that many therapists. Audience, come on, be therapists. Encourage your kids to become therapists. It's never too late. We need them. We need them. There's only probably 2% of Black or people of color therapists. We need that.
Yeah.
We need
Yeah.
that. And, and so when you're dealing with a child who has trauma, I will look for TFCBT therapist. And as an adult, it's called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's called CBT. This is what I practice a lot with a little bit of trauma therapy. But CBT is like talking therapy. It's me and you talking. And we're going to talk about your feelings and how they're connected to your behaviors. And we're going to stop those negative thinking patterns and behavior patterns. And CBT, that's for short, it's aimed to improve your mood and overall well being. It focuses on the present. It focuses on the current problems and how it's affecting you. Um, we're looking at problematic patterns. If you keep picking the same guy, same person, different relationships, but the same person who may treat you not good, we need to figure out why.
Yeah. Because the problem is you.
The problem is you, and it's trauma. It's
Mhm.
trauma.
What is your concept of generational trauma? Because some people, now we're thinking that learning about trauma is still cliche. It's not really a thing, or it's not as big as we want to make it seem. It comes and it goes. But let's really dive down into what is generational trauma.
Your dream come to life. That is the mission behind Kiki Creations. We're more than a decorating service. We put our all into taking in every detail of your vision and transforming that into breathtaking events. Whether you're celebrating a wedding, retirement, throwing a massive gala, or having an intimate dinner, let Kiki Creations create the moment of your dreams. Celebrate love, laughter, and the moments that really matter with Kiki Creations.
Infinitely me. Handcrafted, intentional, timeless.
There is a specialized therapy that really helps a lot with trauma, and they found out by treating veterans and people who've had severe sexual abuse. It's called EMDR, and this is a very when you this is for someone who's severe had that chronic trauma. So remember, that's that third level was acute, complex, and then chronic. This is what you want to do if you've been in war, you've been a victim of sexual abuse for a long period of time. EMDR it's called eye movement. I have whole desensitization and reprocessing. And so when I'm talking about that, we're going to be working with eyes. We're going to be working with body movements. Um, it helps you focus on those distressing memories. I actually did this a couple of years ago, and it brought up some trauma that I didn't even know I had. And
Mm.
that makes people feel weird because they're like, well, how did you not know you had trauma? Because we push it, push it, push it, push it, push it way down. And our body has a way to protect you. But with the EMDR, it's like we're talking, but it's really, it seems like magic because I'm like, look at my finger, and we'll be talking. And then next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, or like, we're going to do this. It's a lot of interaction with that. Um, it helps people who have trauma or like reprocess their traumatic memories. It
Mm.
helps why in an emotional, like, it helps decrease that emotional distress. Um, and this has only been around for since 1986.
Wow, that's like yesterday.
Yeah, this is currently a new current form of trauma therapy. Also, to get even deeper, where they're using now, it's called ketamine psychotherapy. And that is also taking the drug ketamine under a medical practice and guideline. And you would actually take ketamine and we would sit and talk about your trauma. Ketamine is like a depressant. You've heard it in the news and people have done it, like people can abuse it, but if it's used therapeutically, it can help reduce those traumas and help lessen those trigger responses. So people, we're doing, because we are figuring out as therapists ways to process trauma because we're realizing how big it is and how it's been swept under the rug.
Yes,
Swept under
and
the
how to normalize it so we can get better and be
right.
who we need to be. And one thing that you mentioned about gut and brain health and chronic pain, and those are some of the physical symptoms of having trauma. Um, in addition to, with the gut, because a lot of times, like the other day I was reading something and it's like to get rid of a lot, or to deal with a lot of your chronic ailments and illnesses, you have to deal with your gut. But in order to also deal with your gut, you have to get your mind right so you can really do what it is that you need to do, so they go hand in hand. And with everything, as you mentioned, it seems like the brain and the gut goes hand in hand.
Well, and that's how you can do. You have to kind of, it can come out physically with your gut. So if you know someone who always has gut issues, and I'm not telling you to go out and be like diagnose people, and you
No,
know
no,
their
no. We're
history,
not diagnosing. We're just providing information. We're not being
no,
diagnosing anyone.
well, but then if you know, just as an example of someone in your life, if they always had gut issues and you know they suffered a trauma, that's your example right there. That's your, I'm not telling you what I read, I'm telling you what I know. And so this is, so it can also come out if someone's always sick. Like, why am I always sick? Why am I? Because trauma can reduce your immune system, so you're more susceptible to colds, to things like that. It's all interconnected. What I hate about mental health is people don't recognize it. If you had a broken arm, people are like, oh my God, your arm is broken. Like, what can I do? But when you suffer from PTSD, acute chronic complex trauma, it's not seen, so people don't take it serious. So we just keep it. Again, my thing is sweeping it under the rug. But it could kill you. It could kill you. It could kill you. Or it can make you do things that you normally wouldn't do. And that's hypersexual activity. It could be substance use. It could be impulse, dangerous activity. Like, why would you go jump off that cliff when you know the water's shallow? It will make you do things that you normally wouldn't do. And so it can make you sleepy. Trauma can do a lot.
Make you eat
Trauma
too
can
much.
do make you eat too much, make you eat not enough. or make you feel guilty about just being. So, yes. There's also one other therapy I want to mention real quick. It's called DBT,
Okay.
and it will also help with trauma. And so when you're looking for someone, a therapist, and you're like, oh, these are just really good trauma-based therapists, DBT focuses on building skills to manage intense emotions, and it helps us tolerate distress. But any therapist worth their degree can do all of this, except the EMDR. EMDR is kind of because it's a lot. It's very intense, but it helps a lot with the trauma. But if you're looking for someone, as if you're looking for a therapist, you can just ask them what they like, what their therapeutic model, I'm sorry, getting in the weeds, that they use. And then you can go from there.
Okay, well that's good to know. But let's talk also about the types of trauma. I want to talk a little bit more about generational trauma, and in addition to just the family secret, just from, you know, what is your concept of generational trauma? Because some people, now we're thinking that learning about trauma is still cliche. It's not really a thing, or it's not as big as we want to make it seem. It comes and it goes. But let's really dive down into what is generational trauma.
Generational trauma is trauma that's passed down through generations. I know it seems simple, yet we as a culture, this is an example, suffer from higher blood pressure than the other cultures, a lot of cultures in the world. The reason why is generational trauma. We talked at the beginning that trauma can give us high blood pressure, can give us diabetes, can give us some kinds of cancer. Trauma, we were figuring out, can change the DNA. And so over 400 years ago, we were living in Africa, living in the Caribbean, just living our lives. And then all of a sudden something comes and it is very traumatic to our whole society. And we end up here. And so then we're in slavery. I'm sorry, I'm getting in the weeds, going down.
No,
And
I
so
want to get in the weeds because I need our listening audience to really get it. I want to do this.
and so then we're in slavery. We're in a traumatic situation and we're doing whatever we can do to survive. That changed our DNA. Oh, wait, then our children are sold away. We'll never see them again. Changes our DNA. Then we continue to have children. Our DNA has been changed by trauma. And so then now we have higher incidence of alcoholism because we don't know how to deal with the trauma. So guess what? That changes our DNA. Your great grandfather, my great grandfather was an addict. He liked to drink. I wonder why. Yet that changes. So then that can create domestic violence to your grandmother. That changes DNA. My great grandmother. That changed the DNA of my grandmother. Changed the DNA of my grandfather. So trauma can change DNA. And so I have high blood pressure. I'm normal weight. My doctor's confused. Why do I have high blood pressure? Trauma. Trauma that probably happened to my great grandmother. You ask why, not why, people ask, like, why are Black families and in our culture, like, why are we so angry? Because we weren't able to get it out before. And now we can get it out. But no one wants to talk about why we are angry. Well, because we were traumatized. So trauma, it could go, you look at your family history, it's you can see the trauma in your family's life. You can see, and I don't want to, our young men are like, we abandon families. Well, because we've been taught that. We've been taught that for 400 years. And it's men and women. We abandon family trauma. Trauma. And so we have higher instances, like I said, of high blood pressure. We have higher instances of some forms of cancer. So when people say, oh, that doesn't affect me, it does. And that's why I like to normalize it, because once we talk about it, guess what? Our DNA can be changed for the better. Because if we keep it in, it's going to affect our next generation. That's why, again, those children under 30, they breaking generational curses left and right. And it's uncomfortable for people over 40 to do that, because we've been taught all of our lives to keep, if grandma such and such, what, my grandfather, yeah, he had a family outside of other family, but like we're going to keep it to ourselves. No, no. What if grandma had enough support where she could have left and wouldn't have to deal with the trauma? How different would our line be? How different will our line be? And so we, as a Black culture, because I love it, are now dealing with our trauma, and we're breaking generational curses. Not saying other cultures don't have it, but we kind of suffer from more. And people want to know how we make it. It's because we were built to be resilient and strong. But that's not fair to us. Why can't we be soft?
Yeah.
We've been taught to be resilient and strong because our families went through so much. It's not by our choice. It's not by our choice because we go crazy with the trauma because we've not processed it. So that's when I talk about generational trauma. It changes our DNA. We're finding that out. There are studies now, like that's again why I love the brain. There's studies out now that show, like, yeah, it changes our DNA. That's why I have high blood pressure. That's why a
Well,
lot of us have high blood pressure.
I always believe that it must be a generational something, because I found it exciting, bizarre, strange, and exciting that someone from Connecticut had the same growing up as someone from the Virgin Islands, someone from Antigua, someone from Tennessee, someone from New York. It's like we can tell the same stories different ways and laugh about it, but it was the same exact thing. We never met, we never knew each other before, but we have that connection. I was like, this must be a generational thing. This must have come over from the slave ship. So I'm so glad that you're talking about it, because I always felt that it must be something generational. How can they have the same experiences and they don't live in the Caribbean? They lived in the
Right.
States.
Well, and the famous saying is, what goes on in this house stays in this house. Don't you be telling everybody what goes on in this
Our
house.
business,
We
yeah.
don't go out, yeah, our business, because, well, if it's trauma, I need to tell somebody.
Hmm.
And so it is. When I went down to the Caribbean, and I'm all like, people in Kentucky where I'm from who are therapists are like, oh my God, like they're living in paradise, they're having this. And I'm like, no, it's trauma. Everybody got trauma. It don't matter if I can see the ocean every day or if I'm looking at the Ohio River that's flooded right now. It's trauma. We all have the same issues. And that's again why I like to I keep saying it, because if I keep saying normalize it, hopefully people will hear me. It's
Yeah.
okay to share your stories. It's okay. Because you might have something, how you got through some trauma that I've not thought about. And I'm a therapist. It's my job. So if you keep it hidden, how am I going to learn from you? And if I keep it hidden, how are you going to learn from me?
You're right.
We got to stop. We got to stop this mentality that we got to keep it a secret. I'm an open book. You can ask me, I will tell you about my trauma. I will tell you how I traumatized my daughter because I didn't know better.
I
I'm
did the same. I did the same.
and no fault of my own, because I did what I knew. Because my family swept it under the rug. My parents were the best, but they swept a lot of stuff under the rug. And I don't do that with my daughter because I want to break that generational curse. And I don't want to deal with her daughter. So that's why you see me smiling. You're like, girl, I love it. I love talking about it. And because we have to talk about it. It hasn't been working it hasn't been working for us as a society, what we have been doing when it comes to trauma. And that is learning what triggers are. Our triggers are. How to
Yeah.
treat our triggers.
And
Like,
give us some pointers of how to deal with treatment of these triggers. How should we deal with these triggers?
it's so much.
I,
And it sounds so weird because I asked my journaling.
that's not weird
Journaling.
at all. I
Some
journal.
people, wow, what does journaling do for me? It helps release that trauma. It's going to name it. Because if we keep it in our head is round, so it's just going to keep coming back, keep coming back. Well, Carrie, I buried it down. Yeah, but you drank a lot. Oh, Carrie, I buried it down, but you smoking a lot of weed. Oh, Carrie, I just buried it down. Well, you're walking around angry. Write it down. Nobody has to read it. Write it down, burn it. I use my cell phone. I journal into my cell phone. I talk into my cell phone all the time just to get those feelings out of my head. This is going to sound silly.
No, there's no silly. This is a free zone, no judgment zone.
Our body keeps score. So our body holds our trauma our in our body, mostly in our hips. And so one thing that our ancestors did, and we're doing it too, but we're doing it as like fun, is to dance. Twerking, and it sounds like you're like, what? Twerking and moving those hips helps release that trauma.
We don't twerk in the Virgin Islands.
Well, I'm in the States
No, I'm saying
right now.
we walk up.
See,
Which is
I'm trying to get this. I'm trying to get there. I'm trying. But like we dancing and shaking those hips. It sounds to me one of the best things to help deal with trauma is have a dance party for 10 minutes every day. Shake those hips. Dance. Get that movement. Yoga. Yoga is a perfect way to release trauma. There's actually a couple places in the Virgin Islands that do trauma informed yoga. That will
really
help. Yeah.
okay. That's good
It
to
will,
know.
yeah, because it was going to release what's stored in us. So along with therapy and doing those movements, you're healing yourself because you're going to identify your triggers and you're going to release that trauma in your body. One other thing is deep breathing.
Hmm.
Um, and that is you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, and you exhale for 4 seconds. It's so easy. It's
Is
called four
is that
four
the one
four.
that you do within your stomach? Because one time a girlfriend she did, we went to a class in Yacht Haven, and I guess it was a trauma class because we did a lot of breathing to release stuff, and it was a lot of that type of breathing. So I guess
Well,
I did
that's
it. Yeah. Okay.
you did do that, but the 444 is easy, but you can
Okay.
go either in even more into breath work. And I would look for someone who's certified, it seems like you did in breath work, because it's going to teach you dragon breathing. This is all yoga too. This is
Okay.
all yoga breathing. It's going to teach you to do deep breathing. It's called diaphragmic breathing. And that's when you're doing, you're like, how's this helping? It does. And there's something called holotropic breathing. And it's a cycle. I'm not an expert in it, so I can't even do it. But there are certain kinds of breath work that help with that. There's grounding techniques. And literally, a grounding technique, when it gets overwhelmed or the trauma overwhelms you, can be as easy as taking your shoes off and putting your feet in the ground.
I've done that.
Connect, and we're connecting to Mother Earth. We're finding out that works. We're finding out that works. And so, why not use something that's free? You go out there, put your feet in the grass or in the sand, and deep breathe. Do the 444. It's so easy. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. And
Well,
that can,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, I didn't cut you off here. I don't know. I can't say I won't say. I mean, my dad is 97 years young, and he loves to garden, and he loves to that dirt in his hand and get that soil, and do the planting and the gardening and everything that I tell him not to do in my yard. He wants to do that. So I know that it's said that the nutrients from the soil is good, especially for seniors and so forth. So I guess that's his way of healing with stuff, with his things as well.
That's grounding right there.
Okay.
It's called mindfulness. You're being in the moment. And so that helps you, like that dirt, like you said, the smell, like you're back to nature. We've moved away from that. And our ancestors did those things. It worked. But then we got smart enough where like, we're not going to do what our ancestors did. Well, it kind of works. So we need to kind of go back. We can do advanced stuff, but we need to get back to that gardening. We need to get back to putting our feet on the earth. We need to just learn to be in the moment. We don't need to check our email all the time. We don't need to do all those things just because that's taken away from our healing. Because guess what? It's all going to go back to trauma. And it sounds but like even they're finding out, even though we don't remember, like being born can be traumatic because there's some people that carry that with them. Our brains are amazing. We know more about space than we do our brains. And so we're finding all these things out. And that's how we know about I'm going to go generational trauma and how it changes and how trauma even changes us as human beings. And then another thing that helps us cope with trauma is body scanning. Figure out where the tension is. And then you feel it,
Okay.
and then you want to start moving your toes, move it up. You're just going to start trying to release that tension in your body. And name it. Name your emotions. It's
Okay.
nothing wrong with being scared. I'm scared because a gunshot made me go back to when I saw my friend get killed.
What about tapping? Is that a part of the healing mechanism for trauma or just anxiety in a whole?
What was it? The question? I'm sorry.
Tapping your body,
Tapping.
tapping.
That is part of EMDR. See, people are
Okay.
doing that, don't even know. Because if you do, you see, okay, our collarbone.
Mm-hmm.
If we get those triggers, if you do like this along your collarbone, you got to tap it. That will help reduce it because here I go with my teaching. It's resetting something called the vagus nerve. So if you
Okay.
feel like your trigger is if you're feeling too intense, you can also take a cold paper towel, wet paper towel, and put it on the back of your neck. We used to do that as kids. And
Yes, we
guess what?
did. And I thought it was just cooling me down because it was hot, or I just needed a moment to go into hanging out with a friend. So you just put that washcloth behind your neck.
And that's going to help reduce those symptoms of the triggers. You can tap if they found this. It seems so simple. Can help reduce the symptoms of trauma. So again, the body is amazing. And you're talking about like how do we do it like your dad was out in the garden. Well, it's
Yes.
rhythmic. He's hoeing and pulling weeds. It's rhythmic. When those triggers happen, the best thing to do too is go for a walk because it's rhythmic.
Right.
So it's that movement, releasing that tension from the body. Again, a dance party. A
Yeah, I
dance
need to
party.
do that because I have been having a dance party, and yesterday was one of my friend's birthday. The other day was one of my friend's birthday, and we were talking about joining a dance exercise class because I love to dance, and she likes to dance, but I love to dance, but I don't always find the time to dance. So I've been trying to incorporate that instead of general an aerobics. So now that I know that I need to incorporate that to deal with the trauma and deal with the stress and the anxiety, I'll be having more dance parties.
Having more dance parties and name your emotions and name what you're feeling. We
Name
as
what I'm
humans,
feeling.
Name what there's 37,000 emotions.
And counting.
Not and counting. And so we need to figure out what we're feeling, and that's called emotional intelligence. Because if we know what we're feeling, then we can deal with it. I've suffered some trauma at 35, but I have to tell myself, Carrie, I'm in control now. I'm in control. What happened to me does not make me. It will
Yeah.
not break you.
Are you considering owning a firearms and don't know what steps to take? Call VI Guns and Ammo LLC. They are the perfect place to offer you basic firearm classes. They have the application fee. They'll do full background checks for you and assist you with all the ins and outs and the logistics of owning a firearm in the Virgin Islands. Go on, give them a call, 305-333-8802, VI Guns and Ammo LLC. That's the place to assist you with all your firearm training needs. Call them today.
A lot of people, and it's going back to trauma, are angry. And you're like, why are they angry? Because trauma and because sadness and angry are sisters. And if you can't express your sadness, because I've been victimized, I can't tell anybody about my trauma. It comes out in anger. But wait, their cousin, if you can't express your anger, comes in, and that's depression. So it's all interconnected. And so when you see
But
someone angry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
isn't anger a motivator though?
If it's all good till it hurts.
Okay.
It can motivate you. But I'm talking about the people you see on the street who are just angry.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are you so angry? It's a beautiful day. And they're like, because they're sad about something. And they can't express it. Because guess what? When we express our sadness, it makes us look weak. Well, some trauma happened to you. It's going to make you sad. If I watch, this is going to show my age, Old Yeller, and they shoot the dog and I cry, you're going to accept that? Because old Yeller got shot. But if I saw something that's traumatic to me, I can't express it to you because it's not acceptable. No, you allow me to cry when I saw Old Yeller, and that's fiction. This is my life.
Yeah.
I would like to sometimes cry about it. It doesn't make me weak. It makes you weak when you don't talk about it.
That's almost like, you're talking about Oh Yella. That's how I felt about The Color Purple. I hated Danny Glover for years. I hated him until the second Lethal Weapon because I just thought of him.
That's Mr. You're like, that's, you know what? I hate to say it, that's a perfect movie full of trauma.
It is. It is. I watched it as a child, so I was traumatized, and I hated him. I was like, he's showing as a cop, he's a horrible person. And then it was like Camilla, he was acting, he did an excellent job. But it took me Lethal Weapon 2 as an adult to realize he's just a great actor.
Well, and that goes back. I'm about to throw up Danny Glover again. Trauma experience in my life. My mom took me to go see Places in the Heart with Danny Glover and Sally Field and John Malkovich. And if you see it, I'm sorry, it's a traumatic movie too. But it was about Jim Crow South.
Mm,
And I'm 8 years old watching this, and it traumatized me. And my mom thought we're just going to go see a movie. But it made me not like Danny Glover. And then I see him in The Color Purple. So I really didn't like him. I liked him, but then now I'm like, ah. So that was a traumatic experience. I told my
yeah,
mom, I
it,
was
it
like, that
was
was
a
not a good
traumatic
experience.
experience for me. I was traumatized. How could he do that to that child and be so evil? Yeah.
Right. And so we're sitting here normalized and talk about the movie, but that's a great traumatic movie that shows that can change our DNA.
Hmm.
Because Celie's children, because I just watched it, I'm all like, now I have a blank. They were changed.
Yes.
Sophia's children's DNA was changed. And then the DNA of Sophia's children was changed. But Sophia was strong enough to leave Harpo. Well, until,
Yes.
and Celie wasn't strong enough to leave Mister. That DNA changed. And then the sister who lived in Africa, her DNA was changed too.
Yeah. And then let's talk a little bit about, I mean, I know this is a fiction character, but it's real life. Celie wasn't strong enough to leave because she was never looked at as a person. It was always an object or a thing because she wasn't pretty enough, or she wasn't this enough, or she just wasn't enough, period. And they treated her, and she felt worthless because she never felt worthy because no one ever treated her that way.
And that's trauma. She
And
couldn't move
that's
past her trauma. She couldn't
and
move past her trauma
yeah,
until someone fed into her. And
yeah,
that was, and she, God,
should,
Shug, thank
yeah,
you. Shug fed into her and said, because the first thing we saw from Shug is, you sure is
it's
ugly. And you're
great.
like, oh my God. But then Shug gave her enough support to where till Celia realized her worth. And then she didn't she left him.
Yeah,
And we saw what happened to Mister. She
exactly.
left.
But and that's what we need. We need people to feed into our spirit, into our beings, to help us change, these generational curses. And too many times, I think a part of the generational trauma that we've been suffering is because we need to dumb down. We need to hunker down and not be so haughty or and not be out there. You need to humble yourself and act small and be small. Be you. Be great. Expand. Stretch. See who you are. And I'm not telling you to be a obnoxious person, but I think too many times we're told to clip our wings because we don't want to seem like, and we don't even know who we are. So what is it that we're seeming like if we don't know who we are?
You better preach because we're worthy of taking up space. You might see me
Exactly.
walking down the street like this because I'm worthy of taking up space.
Exactly.
I've processed my trauma. I know I'm worthy of taking up space. And it's not
I
fair. I
commend
hate
you.
that we shrink down because nobody
And a
else
lot of
shrinks
adults
down.
have told us that because I've experienced adults tell me it's like, well, why are you acting like that? But who told you that you're so and so? I was like, I don't need anyone to tell me that. I saw me. But even though I told them that to make it seem like they're not affecting me, I still took on some of those feelings. Like, why would they say that to me? Am I really like that? And I was like, no, I'm not receiving that. So, even though I myself told myself I'm better than what it is that you're telling me, I'm not gonna hunker down because you think I should. There was still the insecurity in me that felt, well, maybe I should. Maybe I should be quiet. Maybe I shouldn't, be this person. But then there's the other part of me that was screaming, girl, be who you are. So I'm always fighting with both of them.
Well, I mean, I was asked, who are you to move to the Virgin Islands? You're supposed to stay in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Why are you dreaming so big? Well, because I processed my trauma and I know I can do anything. I don't have to shrink down. I don't
Yeah.
have to stay and listen to the status quo because that's what we've been told. I'm tired of sweeping things under the rug. My
Yeah.
therapist has helped me process that trauma. And like we as I want to say we as Black people all have trauma. We all
Yeah.
have trauma. And
I,
so what's wrong with saying, hey, I'm hurting and this is why I'm hurting? We don't have to go into the depths of it unless someone asks, but like, no, I've suffered from trauma. And guess what? I'm an example that you can get over it. Not over it, process it. So
process
I
it.
can grow around it. Because we don't get over it. We just grow around it and become stronger with it.
We
And
use it to go on to our next, and as you said, help someone else. Because if we don't talk about it, how can I help you? How can I lead by an example if I don't share? You know, but sometimes we don't want to share because we don't want people to know our business. We don't want to be judged. And I think those are some of the reasons why we can't heal, because there's the shame, the inner shame, and the stigma.
Yet the shame shouldn't be on you. The shame should be on the person who victimized you. You hear me talk about victimized because I'm still trying to figure out a word for someone who has been traumatized instead of victimized, because victimized has a negative connotation. I look at people who have suffered trauma, they're survivors because you had a choice. Either you're going to move through it or you're not. And people who are survivors move through it. People who are victims don't. And unfortunately, we know people who are victims who love the trauma that they're not going to process it because it's their identity. And
Yeah.
that's like bad
Yeah.
because you shouldn't live in that. That we're going to go back to therapy. You need to work on inner child work when you're a victim because inner
Hmm.
child work, something happened. You need to tell that inner child. I'm holding my belly because that's what I do when I do inner child work with my clients. Is we got to tell ourselves that we're not that person anymore. We're not that kid that was powerless. I'm an adult. You're safe. And when I talk about inner child work, I'm 49. I could be talking about when I'm 35, healing that inner child at 35, because I'm not the same person. I've suffered some trauma at 35, but I have to tell myself, Carrie, I'm in control now. I'm in control. What happened to me does not make me. It will
Yeah.
not break you. It hurts, but I put words to my feelings too. And so that's what I'm talking about when we process. You have to, it's not fun. When I work with people who have trauma, I'm like, today is not going to be a good day. And they're like, oh, we're going to do some trauma work.
Mhm.
Because therapy is not all like I'm having fun, but it's not fun sometimes. But sometimes it is. Yet
Well,
we have to process.
growth is hard. Growth is hard, period. And one thing I think that we need to realize, even as adults, and we're still dealing with traumas that we don't know about, or traumas that we do know about. And as we process it, it's growth.
It's growth. And guess what? If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to be strong enough because you survived the trauma to know that you're strong enough to go through it. We can do hard things. It's just the first step. It's just the first step. And taking that first step is hard because you have to say, I was hurt.
Yeah.
And sometimes acknowledging that you were hurt, it's hard.
It is
But
hard.
that's but my mom made it through it. Well, you're not your mom. My friend went through so much more. You're not your friend and your trauma is valid.
And that's it. We need to know our individual situation is our own individual situation and not compare it to anyone else,
It's
because
not,
our
oh, are we
life
in a
is our
competition?
story.
Yeah, who are we competing against? Your trauma, my trauma is bigger than your trauma. Well, my
Yeah.
trauma, it's still trauma. It's
Yeah.
still trauma.
It's still trauma.
My trauma's a big T trauma. Okay, mine's a little T trauma. It's still trauma. I've been in a car wreck. I don't like to drive anymore. And I've been through a car wreck. Well, it didn't change you like it changed me. And so that's when you'll hear me talk, like you heard me talk about name your feelings, validate
Yeah.
your feelings, because your feelings are personal to yourself. And the first step of healing yourself is realizing you need help.
Yeah. I've been teaching myself, and when I do my podcast or just have a conversation with people, I always tell them, feel your feelings. That's the only way you're going to heal, is feel your feelings. So thank you for validating what I've been saying. Feel your
Yeah,
feelings.
feel your feelings. And you may think it's silly but sometimes you need to self validate your feelings. It's okay. I feel this way.
Hmm.
It's okay. I feel this way because that's what a therapist is going to do. We're going to validate your feelings too. We're going to acknowledge that it hurt and it wasn't fair, and how you're feeling is right. And so again, I'm smiling like, oh, trauma's the best. What I would give to people who are wanting to process their trauma is just start.
Start.
Just start. I'm not
And
because sometimes it's hard to start, but if you stop, you stop. But at least start. because it may not be your season for you to process that trauma because it may be too painful.
So you can
But then,
start and pause.
yeah, yeah. Don't set yourself for, I'm going to go to therapy every week. That's setting you up for failure if you don't want to do it. And then that's going
Yeah.
to make you feel guilty and make you feel like you're not worth it because you didn't complete therapy. No, we'll be here. Therapists will be here. It's just taking that one step.
Mm,
It's
okay.
taking that one step.
And that's a brain gut thing. So if you feel if it's not working, just pause. I am truly enjoying this conversation. I know some talking about trauma is a hard conversation to have, but we need to realize that we all experience trauma, every last one of us. And we, as we go through our lives, we need to learn how to process our feelings and process what it is that we're going through so we can deal with it, so we can grow. And I am just so enjoying everything that you offer, Dr. Williams. So tell our listening audience, if someone wants to reach out to you for a session, how can they reach you and be a potential client of yours? How can our listening audience reach out to you?
I work for Mind, Body, Health, and Psychology. It's located in Yacht Haven, but we provide telehealth if someone happens to live on like St. John or in St. Croix. We provide that. It's telehealth. Our number, if you want, I can give out the number. It's 1-340-715-6463, and we would be glad. There's Dr. Walker. She is amazing. She also will take clients like I can't say enough about Dr. Walker and the staff at Mind, Body, Health, and Psychology because we're in the business of healing people.
Right, she is.
And we understand if it's not a good fit, we'll find you a good fit because it's not about us, it's about your healing. So I'm at Mind, Body, Health, and Psychology. We're located in Yacht Haven. We provide telehealth and in-person therapy. And we have men and women therapists. So that's also a man therapist is very hard to find. And Dr. Ambrose is excellent too.
That's good to know. That is
Mhm.
definitely good to know because I mean, there's just so much to unpack, and I definitely want you need to come back and talk to us and educate us because the information that we've been providing today is to help and guide you into dealing with your everyday trauma because there's even trauma at work. And we didn't even touch that yet.
There's WAPA trauma. There's all kinds of
There's
trauma.
trauma that we've been experiencing this past week. There's WAPA trauma. So yeah,
There's
it
trauma.
is. There's
I would
trauma.
love to come back. I would love to come back and talk more about trauma and what we can do to help normalize it. I
Yes.
thank you. I 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 thank you.
Thank you right back. But before we leave and before I pose our question to our listening audience, you've unpacked so much information. It was just such a wealth of information that I was taking notes, writing it down. But what is it that you would like our listening audience to take away in addition to everything that you provided? What is the takeaway? What are
The
some words you want?
takeaway is I think my favorite thing, and that's my saying, is we all have issues. We all are living life, and it's how we address those issues. And sometimes we might be have pride and say, nobody can help me. Why am I going to go talk to somebody who don't even know me? Well, guess what? Come talk to somebody who doesn't even know you, because guess I'm going to give you objective. I have nothing to base anything on except what you tell me. And my job as a therapist and as therapist is to help you process your trauma. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help.
Yeah,
Just take the first step. You've already lived through a lot. If you don't like it, you don't have to go back. Just start work
agree.
healing yourself. Heal yourself. Break those so you can be examples for other people. You may not have children, but there's ripple effects that people have. So instead of it being negative, let's be positive about it. Let's just be
Agreed.
positive
Agreed. Dr.
about it.
Williams, I truly thank you and the time that you have spent here with us on Let's Talk About You. This conversation was healing for me. It was triggering for me. It just brought up so many different emotions. And even just talking about The Color Purple and shows, it, it just it just brought up so many things, and having conversations, and I could see why people do things. Even my dad and his love for being a garden, because that gives him his peace because of whatever traumas he may have sustained. And with 97 years of life, I'm sure he's gone through a lot. I know he has gone through a lot. And
Mhm.
the question that I want to pose to our listening audience is, what are some small steps that you can take today towards your healing? And based on the information that has been provided here today by Dr. Carrie Williams, what are some small steps that you can take to make you a better you and deal with your traumas? It's always an honor and a privilege to have you, our listening audience, spend some time with us on your Sunday afternoon. And with all of this, thank you so much, Dr. Williams. And listening audience, I want you to continue staying blessed on purpose. Have a good one.